here at Tier 1, and the goal today is to test the Cobb top mount intercooler. Now, the Cobb top mount is a bar and plate intercooler. The factory intercooler is a tube and fin. Now, a lot of people seem to think that I said that bar and plates don't work. They're misunderstanding what I'm saying about bar and plates versus tube and fin. So I'm going to reiterate what I said and then explain how I'm going to test. So the first thing is tube and fin has less mass. And tube and fin generally, because let me back it up. It has less mass because, why? Well, it doesn't have the plates, right? Plates don't exist, it's tubes. And the tubes are very thin wall. And those tubes are the interface between the hot air from the turbocharger and the cool air from the outside. So in between those, the fins or the tubes are fully exposed, and the fins are attached between the tubes to help dissipate the heat from the intercooler, right? So there's no plate action. Now the bar and plate is kind of like what it sounds like. It's these layers of steel with tubes in between them, and they're relatively thick, and as such they have more mass. Now, the tube and fin is used on every production car that has a heat exchanger. I personally don't know of any that have bar and plate. I'm sure there could be some. If there is, it's probably for something like maybe an oil cooler. But I don't know of any bar and plate heat exchangers on any production cars, because they're not efficient. Plain and simple, they are not efficient. That thickness and a few other things that we'll talk about make it difficult to get the heat into the atmosphere. Also, the construction makes it difficult to get air through it. And in a vehicle, you're trying to cool things with air hitting the front of the car, in front of the bumper, or the grill, I should say. And there are things behind that intercooler. You have the radiator, you have the AC condenser, you have all those things behind it. And so a bar and plate restricts the airflow to the things behind it. And so for that reason, especially when you see all these heat exchangers stacked up in the front of a car, like my truck, even for example, the Duramax truck, right? It's got the big ass radiator, it's got an AC condenser, it's got a big old freaking tube and fin intercooler that's 3 feet wide and 2.5 feet tall or whatever. And then it's got oil coolers in front of that, power steering cooler, right? So transmission cooler, it has all these coolers in the front. And they are all tube and fin because you need the air to go through all of them to get there. And bar and plate does not facilitate that type of flow very well. Now, I did say before that bar and plate is best when you're drag racing. Absolutely. If you're gonna have an air-to-air intercooler, a bar and plate one is the one to have. Lots of reasons. One of them is that mass I talked about. The extra mass is critical in holding heat because you only got to hold it for a few seconds. Two, when you apply full power in drag racing, you're stopped. There's no airflow over the intercooler. So that mass provides a thermal surge volume. It is literally an accumulator of BTUs. The turbo blows much hot air into it. The aluminum inside all that mass sucks up that heat and holds on to it, and then slowly dissipates its atmosphere, which is totally fine because you're only gonna be doing it for 10 seconds or less, when you're free. Tube and fin, on the other hand, they don't have bar and plate. No, and it will not have bar and plate. Tube and fin, on the other hand, doesn't have a lot of mass. That's the whole point. And it facilitates the fastest transfer from the hot air to the atmosphere. Now, the issue with that is you need airflow for that to occur. And so when you take off from a stop sign, the intercooler gets hot if you're taking off quickly, right? And you could be behind the 8 ball on that potentially, but less so on longer poles than if you were on a longer pole on a bar and plate. And so that's why what you see on the dyno often is someone says, oh, this bar and plate did really good on the dyno, the temperatures were really well controlled, everything else. Let's say they did one freaking pole, right? Maybe they did two, but they had time in between, right? That mass sucked up the heat, and then the air that's targeted right at the intercooler pulled it out, and then they did another pole, right? So it isn't like a road race scenario. It isn't like a situation where you have a high duty cycle with the power. It's a low duty cycle. It's temporarily high, but overall, over the duration, of a run, you're not getting that constant heat input into the intercooler. So today we're doing back-to-back testing on the factory FA20 WRX intercooler with the Cobb top mount intercooler. No tuning is going to be done during this time. We put the Cobb charge pipe on the car already with the factory intercooler, so that the charge pipe cannot be a factor in the testing. So right now we have a car that's got an exhaust on it, it's got the Cobb charge pipe on it, it's got a factory intercooler. We're going to do the tests, and then we're going to switch over to the Cobb barn plate intercooler and we do the same test. Now the tests are going to be as follows. I'm going to do some back-to-back pulls. I'm going to have a temperature probe in the intercooler near the hot side of the intercooler, or sorry, the cold side of the intercooler by the throttle body. That's on the surface temperature. Now that doesn't tell us everything by any means. And then I'm going to be monitoring the intake air temp sensor via the factory sensor that's in the manifold via the ECU. Now, the outside temperature is often a misunderstood parameter. A lot of people see a car do a pull and they touch the intercooler and like, oh, this intercooler is still nice and cool. Wow, that's so good. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that by any means. Like that actually could mean that intercooler is the worst intercooler made because it has successfully removed zero heat from the intake air charge. Or it can mean it's a gigantic intercooler with a ton of mass, and the BTUs you put into it during that pull were not sufficient enough to raise the temperature of the intercooler much. Right? So you could have two completely different situations. The intercooler worked phenomenally, or the intercooler was actually really bad, and you would have the same exact indication if it was a cold to the touch. Now the other side of that, the intercooler is really hot. Well, if the intercooler is really hot, well, you know it pulled a lot of BTUs out of the air because you can feel that. It's on the intercooler, right? And at the same token though, it could also mean that the intercooler was not sized large enough to remove heat out of the air charge. So that's where temperature profiles come in handy. If you're looking at temperature at the beginning of the intercooler flow path to the end of the flow path, and there's a large gradient there, and you got really hot, and then nice and cool, that's a good sign. That's a good sign, because the really hot means the intercooler was able to pull heat out of the air, and you can see it. It is absolutely pulling heat out of the air. That's important. And then as it cools off across the intercooler, hey, look at that. This side is still cool. That means not only was it able to pull heat out of the air and absorb it in the intercooler, but it was able to reject that air into the atmosphere well enough that the far end of the intercooler was not very hot. That's a good sign for an intercooler. An inlet to outlet temperature is what goes into the efficiency calculations. If they're both really hot, well, the intercooler's not doing its job. So I have a probe on the cold side by the throttle body. Excuse me, COVID. No, it's Girl Scout cookie piece. I just had a Girl Scout cookie, inhaled some of it, pretty good. All right. I find that if you inhale some of it, it really adds to the flavor profile. Anyway, so I am going to intake temp manifold. It's already on the screen. Look at that. That's pretty great. However, I don't want it this format. I want it in a logging format that I can make a graph with later on. So I'm going to plug my laptop into the access port. I'm going to log it. But first, I'm going to get the whole car kind of warm. So it's sitting here. I want it to be a fair test. So the second intercooler is going to get a car that's pretty warm. So I'm going to do just some casual driving for a while on here. And if you got any questions, I'll happily answer them while that's happening. Unfortunately, I'm holding my phone today. I didn't have my phone mount with me, so forgive the earthquake appearance. Someone asked me about my own intercooler. I have two intercooler projects. Look, well, first off, I have too many projects. I have way too many projects. I feel like this is probably a 6.0 earthquake right now. Let me get these tires unflat spotted. Let me roll this a little faster. Actually, I gotta do something else first. Hold on a second. I need the laptop for the keyboard for the dyno. I need that so I can change the settings. Right now I need to go to speed. I also got to put the customer information in here. I am slacking today, but you know we do here. This is a test, so technically I have a test one on here that I use for testing cars. Test car, there it is. The owner, Testy McTesterson, is a 2000 something, probably a Subaru car. I don't know if you see that. That's our testing one that we do. All right. So first thing I gotta do. Oh, actually, right here. This is the inlet temperature, the temperature probe on the intercooler. So 47 degrees. So I'm gonna try and keep that in mind. So we put the Cobb on there and try and make sure it's at the same range when we start the test. A few degrees, not much you can do about that. Got my cable. Can't do much about a few degrees, but definitely going to try and keep it as close as possible. But you know, ambient air changes throughout the day, and that ambient air is what that 47 is representative of. So I'm sitting right here. All right, my ugly mug. You will not be staring at me the whole time. I'm going to try and turn the camera so you can see all the stuff. I just got to get the setup. So my top mount project, like I said, I have too many freaking projects. Pretty overwhelmed actually, because I'm building tools, I'm building car parts, I'm building air coolers, I'm building pistons, I'm building rods, I'm doing a lot of stuff. And actually my camshaft, my cam seal installation tool, I just got word is complete, and it should be anodized. It will be gold, which of course will make everyone think that my tool is made of brass. It's not made of fucking brass. I don't know, for those that don't know, my my cooling mod is gold, right? And everyone thinks it's fucking brass. It's not. It's not even regular brass, much less fucking brass. Okay. Let me get my software loaded up. Boy, that Girl Scout cookie really gave me a little tickle in there. Oh, here's Chase. Yes, sir.
I was gonna see if you could use a GoPro for filming some segments.
I could. I'm talking live on YouTube right now, but I can definitely use a GoPro.
I'm gonna edit it into a smaller video, so just key points. It's super on. Microphone has to face towards you. You can see yourself.
Okay, I'll set it right here next to the other one.
Bam. Then whenever you want it, just press record.
I'll just hit it now. How much card do you got on here? A full card or an empty card? Looks good.
Like an hour. So.
Oh, that's not gonna be enough. An hour's like my intro.
I know, that's the problem.
What year is this one? Do you know?
Alright, I'm gonna let you be.
Do you remember what year this one is?
What?
What year is this one?
17.
17, yep, you are correct. Alright. Now, am I supposed to tune this too later on, or is this just an intercooler test?
I think it'd be cool to tune it to see what type of power you can get out of it.
Okay, well, the test will be before that.
Yeah. We'll do the test and then let's just see what she does. Whenever. Mike's a super cool guy. And he just got laid off, so what better way to celebrate than to...
Well, now the whole world knows that Mike got laid off.
Well, he's pretty upset about it, so I don't think he cares. He said, F those guys, can't say the name of the corporation, time to move on with my life. So, like, this will be a good celebratory step.
Right on.
What better way to start a new change than with a race car?
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna have the car for that. It's still just a Subaru. All right, let's see. Show current map. So currently it is running Cobb Stage 2 Big SF. Oh, it's got a Cobb intake on it. See, that's right. All right. So let me open that map up.
All right.
All right, man. So I guess I will be tuning it after the testing. That'd be kind of fun to see how much more power it makes, right? Big SF 91 version 302. There it is, right there. To open this map, okay. I have an option for the other one, but sure, whatever. All right, here we go. I'm gonna go live on the ECU. Boop. Please wait while real-time data is retrieved. Thank you, Cobb. I appreciate your thorough nature on your little windows. All right. So let's see. I wonder if I can get that in the way. I think I need an assistant. intake temp manifold. I also want to get intake temp at the MAF because I want to make sure that I have the same differential temperature across it. So I'm going to select that really quick. I'm going to get somebody here to hold the camera, my cameraman, so you guys can see this stuff too. Intake temp pre-turbo. We're going to do manifold pressure. Here, I'm just going to show you that stuff. Check it out. You guys get the special stuff. Alright, we just could do, I don't care. Well, I'll look at that one. Why not? Look at that. Throttle position. Targets, I don't care about that. I don't care about that. These things aren't going to affect what we're doing here. Ooh. I do want this one though. And well, we'll do that one too. Why not? It won't hurt. Airflow. Let's see. Both intake temps. Ignition timing. Don't care about fuel pressures for this. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. That there does matter. We'll throw some knock at it. Let's see, make sure we get some of those shits. Barometric. Don't care. Barometers. Don't care. Do you want command and fuel final? Oh. Fuel final. ABCS, I don't care. Actually, I don't care at all. I'm not looking at that stuff at all. Learning is not full-time right now, so it doesn't matter too much, but I'll slap it on here for S&Gs. But I do want ratio because that does actually happen post-turbo. All right. There we go. Now there's some better data for us. And here's our two temperatures. Interestingly enough, temperature is 66 in the manifold and 59 pre-turbo. So that's a little bit of manifold heat soak, most likely, or the intercooler is just too darn hot from being in the engine bay. However, I got a fan on it, so I don't think it's that. It's going to be just a little bit of the heat soak on the manifold. Once I get some airflow over it, we should see a better. Yeah, there you go. Start dropping. Short shift in the fourth. Roll the window up. I need to tell the dyno that I'm going to be doing 60 miles an hour and tell it what the tach is because it wants to calibrate the tachometer. So it uses the 60 plus the tach to see. Well, it uses roller speed at 60 to relate that to the tach so that I can graph what RPM we're at. So that looks like 3,400. Double check here. Right on 3,400, perfect. All right. So I hit the T button here. T. It's not working. That's perfect. Okay. Let's just tell them what's going on here. Let's try this again. T. There we go. Stupid computer. 34. Hundo. That's really annoying. Can you hear that? I don't know. I don't usually hear it that often, but sometimes that seatbelt noise can really get you. So I don't know if that's passenger or driver. It looks like it's driver. Fine. 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 Okay. There we go. These things are also super sensitive. Often the seat, if you put locked up on the seat, like if I put it in the middle, it'll set it off and it's just bling, 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 bling the whole time. That's really annoying. All right, so now we're in fourth. I'm gonna just put a little load on it. Do some boost at it. Okay. Traction control kicked on, so I'm gonna turn that off. I think I got everything nice and warm. The camera's at the bottom of this one. I'm gonna switch camera sides. Here, let's flip that around. I know you can do that. Oh, no you can't, can you? Nope, you can't. Stupid YouTube app. I think it's Facebook and Marco Polo you can do that. I don't know if you ever use Marco Polo, it's kind of fun. Alright. Alright, so I'm gonna put the phone down really quick just so I can set the parameters on the dyno. I need both hands for that, and then we'll start the pull and I'll pick the phone back up again.
Alrighty.
All right, so what I got inlet temperature graphed on the dyno and power. And then I'm going to take a log here as well and do a pull. So let's do that. It's going to be a 4th gear pull, starting at 40 miles an hour and going until just on the red line. Loading now. So on the Cobb map, we hit a peak at 20 pounds of boost, almost 21. See that there? All right, so now we'll look at our graph. So the surface temp of the intercooler was really flat. That's kind of surprising. It's actually really surprising. Let's open this up a little bit. Start here at 40 and take it to 120. Yeah, okay. But look at the horsepower dip. That's interesting too. Again, that's on the off-the-shelf map. So we're gonna look at the log and see what we find here. So now this is a favorable test to a barn plate at the moment because I'm letting it sit again before I do the pull. I'm gonna do back-to-backs in a second, but right now we're doing a pull with some relaxed time and then do it again. Okay, so we're gonna look at, here we go, intake temperature, pre-turbo, and at the manifold. So it starts off, manifold's a little higher than pre-turbo. That's just, again, probably from heat soak. And then as I give it throttle, you see it starts to cool off. It starts putting cooler air from the intercooler in there, reducing the heat soak. But then it's going to hang a U-turn, most likely. So here we go, 2200 RPM, 2300 RPM. This is taking a long time. Let me skip forward some. All right, here we go, pull starting now. They're even. We're at 45 and the manifold is starting to warm up. We're at 5,000. Now it's above pre-turbo temperature. And we're at 6,000 almost. Here's 6,000. Now we're at 90. So in from 60 to 90. That's actually not too bad. But these sensors aren't instantaneous, so there is some lag time. And usually what you'll see is that after the pull, it continues to increase. 62, we're at 95. Now we're at 100 by 65, 104. All right, so the end of the pull happened. Let's go back. So the pull ended at 104, and it didn't. It dropped down almost immediately. I'm actually surprised by that. Usually they'll have a little bit of a time where they keep climbing up. And she's going back down. Well, what's that tell us? It seems like the factory intercooler is pretty efficient. Granted, it was only one pull, but it did go up almost 40 degrees, but it cooled right back off again. So I would say efficiency-wise, it's really high. But does that mean that it's sized large enough for the heat load that we're putting into it? Well, that was one pull. If I load this thing for a longer period of time, or do 2 pulls back to back, or set a load value, or a speed hold, and load it continuously at 70 miles an hour under some boost, how fast that temp going to go up? Well, we're going to find out, because I'm going to do that here pretty soon too. So for one pull, hitting 106, sorry I missed it, 106 at the peak, it's not terrible. Now, one thing that a lot of people don't know though is that with pump gas, 106 is where things start to go funny. At 106, the knock tendency of fuel is starting, of gasoline, low octane pump gasoline is starting to really increase. At 120, It's a big difference than what it was at 80. Probably 3 degrees of timing even. Like, it's a significant difference. And you start to have a much higher probability of knock. Over 120, I mean, 140-ish, it is way higher. And that's where bad stuff starts happening. So, how easy is that to have happen on here? How easy is it on the stock intercooler for us to hit 140 degrees going into the engine? And then how easy will that be on a bar and plate as well? Now, the Cobb intercooler claims to be better than the competition. I mean, everyone claims better than the competition, but Cobb is usually really good at doing, you know, their research and backing up their claims. So I'm excited to see how this thing does. Unfortunately, I don't have like a Killer Bee or Perrin or whoever else makes a Grimspeed intercooler on here to test back to back with it. But I think looking at it versus the stock intercooler is still a good thing, because most people aren't going to buy a Killer Bee and they go, oh, I want the Cobb because it's 3% better, right? That's probably not going to happen. They're not going to buy the Perrin and be like, oh, I want one that's 15% better. Or, you know, that's not going to happen. These numbers are made up because I have no idea how good the other ones are compared to this one. But, you know, they're typically not going to go from one top mount to another aftermarket top mount. Now, from the factory top mount to an aftermarket top mount, a lot more people are going to do that, right? They're going to buy the one that they think is the best or the one they can afford. And rarely are those two things ever the same. So we're doing it again, only this time I'm going to make the pull speed slower, and that'll keep us in gear longer, and that'll give us a little more idea of how hot this intercooler is going to get. And that one was on a 160 ramp rate, so the dyno dynamics allows me to adjust the ramp rate. So that's 160. I'm going to lower that, and that will make the pulls take longer. 160 is actually a little bit fast anyways for this power level. Like, that pull was a 4th gear pull, and if you were to do a 4th gear pull starting at 40 miles an hour, it would take a lot longer than it took just now. But I did that on purpose. So now we're going to lower this down to 150, and the pull should take longer. And we're going to see what happens again. So, question for you guys. What do you guys want to see? The speedo and tack, or the boost gauge, or what do you guys want to see? Oh crap, I got a bunch of messages in here. Let's see. Top mount project. Oh yeah, I started talking about that and I failed to continue. So my top mount, I'm doing an air-water intercooler that fits in the top mount spot. Now, one of those already exists. I think 2 already exist. The only issue I have is with the size. I've seen them, they're small. And I don't like the airflow path that they chose on their top mount. So I'm gonna do that. My goal is to make something that can handle 800 horsepower, be air-water, and fit in that spot. I'm also doing a front mount. The front mount is bar and plate, or tube and fin. I'm doing a tube and fin front mount. Off the line is doing tube and fin stuff, and so I'm actually getting the core from them, and they get it from PWR. I don't know if they're going to have a solution or not at the moment, but I'm going to try and find something too for the ones that they possibly don't get, or whatever, you know. Different fitment. People want to see different things in their intercoolers. Let's get the chat again. If I get my car going next year, I'd run your air-to-water intercooler. Yeah, that would be sweet. I'd like to get it done by next year. Chase to pre-order that Pure 800. Oh, for your car? You gotta talk to yourself about that one. Billet case halves? Yeah, super pricey, bro. Like, holy shit. I wouldn't do it. They're like 10 grand, right? And I've been working with Dart. Not just me, but a lot of people have been working with Dart, making a Subaru block that is significantly stronger than the factory one. It was supposed to come out this year, and then a few things, me included, threw a wrench in that by saying, well, what about these other things that you guys were doing? They had an awesome solution already, but there were some things I said, maybe we should add this stuff too, and they said, oh wow, that's a good idea, I didn't know that was a problem. And then they came up with a solution, and then, you know, somebody else threw another thing in the monkey, another wrench in the works. So we'll see, you know, where that comes out, but hopefully next year. I have no idea. You know, hopefully next year that comes out. So if your engine's not gonna be close to running until next year, maybe wait for that. See if that comes to fruition. That would be, you know, my choice. Hey Tony. The answer to the belt buckle a bunch of times. Yes, that is true, but I'll be turning the car on off a couple times, which will disable that again. So I just plugged it in behind me. You guys can see boost, okay. D-stroked, love D-stroked. All right, boosted is, was it too close or did it show up when I was this close? Did that work? Did it work when I was when it was up against it, or did it like freak out? Because I know it's super close. Like this. Is that too close? Is my question. All right, like, look at that. All right, lower the speed. Try again. Whoops, almost started pulling. About starting to log. All right, longer pull and go. So that one went quite a bit longer. Still not as long as it possibly could be, but quite a bit longer. Too close, right there, should be good, okay. Yeah, it's the best I could do because I can't hold it and drive at the same time, unfortunately. For that part, I need to be one hand on the wheel, and then I'm trying to log with the other one, so. I could try again, let's see. So that one pissed it off. Power dropped significantly, even though the temperature on the surface of the intercooler indicates that it's less, but it pulled a little bit of timing there, and well, that's what all Subarus do, Connor. Every Subaru is going to do that. They're all going to taper. The stock turbo is never large enough on a stock Subaru to hold boost to redline. Peak boost is always going to be some value, and final boost is going to be 5 or less PSI below that. That's pretty standard. Now the FAs are really bad at spiking boost. They all flare really high and then come back down, and you got to be really aggressive on it. I'm super aggressive in my boost strategy on the FA, and I find that it works really, really good the way I've been doing it. And a lot of people don't do it that way. The shelf maps are totally different than I have on boost control. I like to have that boost nice and flat. But it takes a lot of modification to the turbo dynamics tables and stuff like that to get it to be really nice. But from the factory, it's really weird. Like Subaru lets it spike to like 20-something pounds from the factory, and then it like falls off and gives you a really weird power curve, and it dumps a lot of heat in the intercooler and does a lot of shitty stuff that I don't understand why they didn't improve it. So then I go in and change a bunch of turbo dynamics, and it controls boost great. Unless you have a full exhaust on there, then you got to have a boost control solenoid, because the factory solenoid just doesn't flow quite enough. You control boost really well. Well, downpipe, catless downpipe or a downpipe. All right. So we're gonna go with this log here. Same deal. Starts off in the 60s. Timing's negative because that's what happens on these things when they hit boost. Starts coming in. There's a knock event that it has one. Well, it's a fine knock learned here at 48. Pressure is 18. Timing's only 2 degrees, 2.5 degrees, which doesn't seem too bad to me. So it's probably the typical FA bullshit where they pull away too much timing. I mean, here I am at 1 degree of timing at 5,200 RPM. Like, oh, what is that shit, right? That's just FA isms for you. It's one thing I freaking hate about them. Okay, so 77, 79, 80, 91, 100, 102, 106. 106 again. I lengthened the pole pretty significantly, and we only got to 106 again. That's, I'm honestly a little surprised by that. I figured it'd be quite a bit higher. All right, so we're gonna do one more longer pull again, and then I'm gonna do the steady state loading. Let's close this guy. Just reading the chat there, seeing what you guys are talking about. All right, so I changed the speed to 130. That's gonna be a long pull, and we'll see how she does. In reaction to what you're saying, Connor, about the billet block oil patches being smoother, yeah, barely. The factory ones are actually really smooth because they're drilled post manufacturing, so it's not like one drilled block is gonna be smoother than another drilled block. So I wouldn't think that's the case at all. And then two, the smoothness of the oil mains in the factory block is not an issue at all. There's no part of the factory oiling system that actually has any problems. Contrary to popular belief, the factory oiling system is totally fine. The issue is that the block is not rigid enough, and the mains straddle a very large bore. And when those mains straddle a large bore, the mains are not strong. They deflect and they dump oil pressure from the mains, which therefore starves the rods. It has nothing to do with the gallery size. It has nothing to do with how many turns it makes. There's plenty of oil there and available. The problem is the block is just not rigid enough. So you got to fix that rigidity issue. All right, we're loaded. Starting the log. So one issue that I think the stock sleeves, yeah, I mean that's obviously not an oiling issue. That's a braking issue. Yeah, I actually I switched over to the IAG oil pan. They have a really nice windage tray and all that. I like their oil pan, big fan of it. It's also got an O-ring on it, which is super nice. Okay, so the results, what do we get? Well, let's look at the horsepower, because I've done that as well. What's it say? 237, so it's 5 up from the last pull. Temperature is about the same on the surface of the intercooler. It's not climbing up. I might want to check my probe. That might not be on right, because that thing should be smoking hot by the end of the pull. Especially after 3 of them. Okay. Manifold. This one started at 70. They were all pretty close to that before, 68-ish, 70, right? Intake temp's almost the exact same, 57. And throughout the pull, I'm just going to scroll down really fast. 109. That's it. That's pretty consistent. I'm pretty happy with that. And that's stock intercooler. That's not too bad. Boost pressure's 18 to 19 pounds at peak, and 15 to 16 by red line here. Yep. It's all pretty much the same. But look at that. These things learn to pull timing like crazy. Even when the timing is nothing, the heat is low, 80 degrees. Boost pressure is reasonable. Yet, here's all this learned ignition pull. Now, I can guarantee you that's not real knock. If it is real knock, this guy needs spark plugs and a walnut blast and everything else. But that's just dealing with an FA for you right there. At 0 degrees of timing, I'm knocking at 16 pounds of boost at 5,600 RPM. At 11.5 to 1 AFRs, probably not. Let's just be honest. But that is what the FA does. It's kind of a fickle bitch. All right. I'm thinking here. So I did three pulls, 160, 150, and 130 for the ramp rate. Both of them started at 40 miles an hour. Now, unfortunately, I think that one of the issues with the pull duration being not as long as I think it should be is because I'm starting too low. This dyno's kind of funny the way it loads. if you start the pull outside of the power band, then the pull is shorter than if you start the pull in the power band, because the car grabs the car and holds it for 3 seconds, determines how much torque there is, and then applies its initial correction to the eddy brake, and then kind of holds that and tries to control the speed of the pull. But for some reason, it always is a little funny if I start it too low in the RPM band. But I don't really want to go any higher for that. That part isn't necessarily as important as the temperatures that we're getting and the boost and the power and all of that. So I have some pretty good data here, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do 3 pulls back to back on the stock intercooler and see what happens to the temperature. But first, I'm going to check that probe on the intercooler outside, because it should be screaming up. The surface of the intercooler definitely gets hot during a pull, so I want to make sure that I didn't pull it on accident when I was shutting the hood or something. So take a look at that. You see here, the temperature is perfectly flat. So either my fan is working too darn good, or I goose something up. Yep, there it is. Somehow it came out. I'm not sure what happened, but now that makes sense. I need this probe to be here in the intercooler, like that. Hold this down right there. All right, so sure enough, that's what it was. Darn it. But I mean, common sense would tell you that if I'm sucking enough heat to keep the intake air temps at 106 when they're leaving the turbo at like 200, that it's got to go somewhere, right? It's got to go somewhere. Pin the mains. Yeah, that helps a little bit, Tony. Like, it definitely helps a little bit, but there still is flex. And pinning the mains is definitely kind of a band-aid. How do you say it? So if I have this straight piece and I flex it outward, right, these ends get closer together. So pinning the mains, attach them to the other side of the main, the other main girdle, right? And so then it stretches and starts to bend outwards. Well, that pin helps keep it from pulling down as much, right? But there still is a lot of force in there. And what you'll see is that I'm blocking the camera, sorry, the camera. What you'll see is that the aluminum actually deforms behind the bearing. It actually gets, the whole main itself gets out of round. Just, it deforms the pressure alone of the bearing pushing against it. It deforms. So while it's great that we keep it from doing this and tacoing, right? And a lot of them will actually crack on the back side, right? Back here, a lot of them will actually crack at really high power, like 600, 700 or more. But just in regular use, we can minimize the taco with the pinning, but we can't stop the deformation that occurs behind the shell of the bearing. The aluminum itself is just too soft. Plain and simple, the aluminum itself actually deforms. So, all right, so we're gonna do another one at the 130 with the temperature probe on top of the manifold, properly fixed. I'm actually gonna do 3 of them back to back, unless the ECU starts giving me some other indications that says I should stop doing that. I'll be watching the temperature, it's not getting too high. If it hits 130, I'm gonna stop anyways, because there's no reason to do that to this car. All right, here we go. I'm gonna go from here. I'm trying to hold it, see if I can do that. This camera's bouncing like crazy, poor thing. I'm gonna let it coast. Before I do the other one, let it coast down. I'm not applying brakes. I'm not artificially changing the duty cycle between the intercoolers. I do that at test. Oh yeah, we're getting some good temps on the top of that intercooler. I'll show you guys in a second. That sucker's smoking. Gonna hit 30 and start again. All right, here's the last one. Look at that boost, 23, right? 23. We got a lot of heat in that manifold, that exhaust manifold and everything. Created a situation where the boost came in sooner and harder than it did on previous pulls. Oh yeah, this is good right here. You're gonna love this. There we go. So here's the service temp of the intercooler. First run, second run, the third run. This is weird. Why is it going down? That's weird, right? I'm not the only thing that's odd. So the surface was really, really hot at the beginning of the pulls, and it got cooler during the pulls. When the pulls were at the higher temperature. Let's check that probe again. Still there. Ah! It's dirty back there. You gotta clean that shit. All right, so that's the fun for the stock top mount. I got those graphs, I got the logs, I got things like that. So now I'll put the Cobb on. It's gonna take a little while, and you're gonna see what it does with the Cobb top mount on it with the same test. 160, 150, 130, and then 3 back-to-backs. Starting at 40 every time. Hey Travis. Let's see. What's going on here? What power level does the main become an issue? It's all power levels, unfortunately. Just the higher the power, the worse it gets. I've had some cars where the mains go out of round during the dyno tune. Even the case gets so deformed during the dyno tune that by the end of the tune, with the same oil pressure, or same oil temperature, the oil pressure has dropped like 30 psi. So it's just unfortunate. Bitch a platform to make big power, very expensive. Yeah, that's the truth. So Connor, in that, I think that the biggest issue for that is only going to be keeping oil flow, and that's going to be if you have too big of a pump and you drain the pan, if you have poor drain back, that kind of stuff. But the main flex itself is more of a cylinder pressure thing than an RPM thing. So you'll probably actually be in better shape at 8K than 7K for the same horsepower output. I say probably, but you know. Let's see, do you have built heads for that rev range? Oh yeah, you mentioned pinning the mains on my closed deck block. Anything to solve the flex? Nope, it's all pinned. That's all there is, all you can do right now. Right now, well, I've been working on something, but we'll see. That's not anywhere near being done yet. IAG claims they already did it, but I haven't seen any data for that. But no, you can't. You know, the only thing you can do is make a stronger block. I mean, I still have a main going, or go to a smaller bore. You go to a 2 liter. 2 liters got stronger mains because the bore is smaller, and so the overhang is a lot smaller. So you could try going 2 liter with, you know, a metric ass whack a boost. That's always an option. Yes. No, I'm not playing any music, Travis, because I get freaking screwed every time. Would reverse cooling work better for non-cross-flow heads? What do you mean, non-cross-flow heads? Reverse cooling work better for non-cross-flow heads. Yeah, I don't know what you mean by cross-flow. Are you talking about this platform or a different platform? Also, is my other question. The FA has really good cooling system. They did yes, Travis, cast iron. That's something I wanted to do for quite a while, but finding a foundry to do that for less than 200 grand is really hard to get. The FA has a really good cooling. Every cooling system issue that existed on the EJ is no longer on the FA. The feed to both sides of the engine are perfectly balanced. The flow through the heads is completely balanced. They bias the head first. So here's the thing. Reverse cooling is patented by Evans. The guys make the waterless coolant shit, right? They patented that stuff, which is kind of a fuck job because now nobody can use it unless they want to pay Evans a bunch of money. And so the LS engine series, which I previously thought was reverse cooled because the LT1 was, and then GM got sued, and then they had to make the LS non-reverse cooled. I found the LS was not reverse cooled, and that's how I figured all this other shit out. So I started looking into it. Anyway, so Evans doesn't want anyone to do it unless they pay him a fuck whack of money. And so all these manufacturers know reverse cooling is better, but they're not allowed to do it unless they pay out a bunch of cash. So they're doing like a pseudo reverse cooling. Like the EJ, for example, is kind of a little bit of that. It puts the coolant into the bottom of the block, then it goes to the head, and then it goes to the top of the block, right? They split it. So not all of the heat is absorbed by the coolant before it hits the head, so that helps. And the FA, they do the same thing, only it is even more biased to the head than it is in the EJ. So the FA has got way better head cooling than the EJ, and it has a lot less going to the block than the EJ does. So I keep blocking inside the camera. There's two in here. Forget. Sorry, guys. Anyways, so yeah, I'm doing an LS with a remote water pump, and with that, it's really easy to just switch the hoses around and feed the water to the heads first. You know, so I'm doing one of those in my vet. But that's down the road some. All right, I got a big learning here at idle, 25%. I'm wondering if we pop the hose off or something during this during these poles. I don't know. Or it could be the air filters moved because it's got a Cobb intake on it, or the extension harness or something. Yeah, who knows? Wow, that GoPro did not last long. That was a full battery when he brought it in here. I had a GoPro a long time ago, like the Hero 3 or some shit like that, one of the older ones, and I hated it. I had like 3 of them, and I tried to use them, and they just sucked. Looks like they haven't changed much. Okay, so we're gonna start doing the Cobb testing. I'm actually probably gonna mute the video or something because it's gonna take like 20 minutes, and staring at the screen, the ceilings, and trying to do this isn't gonna be any fun for anybody. So thanks for stopping by for now. I'll fire the stream back up again when we get ready to do the Cobb one, unless someone has some more questions for me that I can answer before I start doing that. A tuning course. On the same side, like some inline 5s. Oh, that kind of crossflow. You mean for the flow of the yeah. Well, no, I haven't thought about it much. I thought about it a little bit, but if we're talking about like a quad, an engine that has 4 valves per cylinder, then that's difficult because you either have to stagger the valves, which occupies more space in the head casting itself, leaving less room for things like direct injectors and spark plugs, or you have to do the intake valves on the leading side and exhaust valves on the trailing side, or vice versa. But you know, instead of being cross, you got to do it. But what that results in is an intake port that has half as much distance to one valve as it does to the other valve, which creates a weird effect when you're trying to feed these valves. The Duramax is still cross flow in that regard, as in it goes intake to exhaust, and it has staggered valves and has direct injection, but those valves are teeny little valves on it, and the head is a completely flat brick, which is pretty interesting. So I don't think that there's a whole lot of use in that, mainly because intake and exhaust are vastly different in temperatures, and it would seem to me that you want to keep the hot away from the cold, and doing that is already hard enough with a freaking H4 or any V8. So I wouldn't think that'd be advantageous at all on hardly any engine, honestly. Now, reversing the flow from intake to exhaust and putting the hot valley in the engine, I fully support that. I think the hot valley is really sweet. Having the exhaust in the middle of the V instead of the outside of the V, I think that's really cool. Having it on top of the H instead of the bottom of the H, I am fully for that. And I actually was working on trying to flip the EJ over, essentially, and that just became, holy shit, a fiasco to get that to work. But I really wanted to have the turbo on top. I thought it'd be really cool. So, all right, time to do some work. Thanks, guys.